Welcome to another session of the course from Web 2 to Web 3, from Wikipedia to Wikidata at Tel Aviv University. And today I'm super excited to host as a guest lecturer in the course Mark Graham from the Internet Archive. Mark, why don't you introduce yourself and tell the students a bit about who you are?
Sure. Hi. Thanks. I'm really happy to be here today with all of you. My name is Mark Graham. I'm currently the director of the Wayback Machine. The Wayback Machine is a service of the Internet Archive. I'm primarily based in San Francisco. The Internet Archive, for some of you who may have not heard about it before, it's a 24-year-old nonprofit organization that's an archive, and it's a library. And we'll get into a little bit about the different services that we offer, how we do what we do, and how that relates to especially work around with Wikimedia Foundation and Wikipedia sites. Yeah.
Sounds good. So Mark, how long have you been into the archive?
You know, come up on 5 years now. So this is a relatively new thing for me. I've been working with the net, online systems, online services, as we called them back in the day, since the early 80s. So I've been doing this for a while. And, you know, I just super briefly, I'll just share that I got involved in computer networks after I got out of the United States Air Force, and I was concerned about the issues of war and peace. And I helped start a computer network for peace activists all over the world. It's actually still going. It's called Association for Progressive Communications, apc.org. And then over the decades, I've worked for nonprofits and for-profits. I've started a bunch of ventures. I worked at The Well for a while. I was head of technology there. The Well was an early online community. And I worked for a long time for a .com called iVillage, which was an early company that specialized in online services for women. And then toward the end of my career, before I joined the Internet Archive, I was an executive with NBC News. And I was part of an innovation team that was working on developing new technologies for journalism and news worldwide. So, you know, I've been involved in online communities and activism and research and news, you know, in general for several decades. So when the opportunity came up to join the Internet Archive, and specifically to take on responsibility for our flagship service, which is the Wayback Machine, I just jumped and haven't looked back since. It's been quite a ride so far.
I'm sure. And I know that you're going to share with the students a bit about the archive, maybe show them how it looks like and what they can do with it. Just make them realize, or kind of try to grasp the magnitude of what it is that you're doing, because I think many of them don't know it. So
yeah. Let me try to paint that picture a little bit. So we're, like I said, we're about 24 years old. We were started by a man named Brewster Kale, who still runs the organization. Brewster had some early successes in the internet, which gave him the financial means to pursue his vision of universal access to all knowledge, modeled after the idea of a Library of Alexandria version 2.0. Can we take all of the work of humankind and make it generally available to all humans? And so the mission statement is universal access to all knowledge. Obviously, that's a North Star. That's kind of like a, you know, we're never going to get there, but it gives us something to work toward. So what we do is we take analog information, we digitize it, we preserve it, and we make it available. And then we take born digital information and we preserve it, and we make it available. So let me dive into that a little bit more. So an example of a piece of analog material would be, or could be, a book. So like the books on the shelves behind me, we take books, we digitize them, we make images of them, and then we add them to the Internet Archive. We do that at scale. We've digitized more than 4 million books. And you know, I'm talking to you right now. We're about it's early May 2020. We're in there. You know, we've been involved in COVID for a couple of months now. Before COVID hit, we were digitizing 3,000 books a day in a operation that we have going in the Philippines. We're in the process of slowly ramping that back up, but we're committed to archiving books at scale, adding them to the archive, and then making them available to people. I'll talk a little bit further on about our work with Wikipedia in that regard. With the Wayback Machine, we archive born digital material. So this is something where it's already available via the internet, specifically available via the web. And what we do is we download web objects. So we're not like taking images. It's not like we're taking a picture of a web page. We're actually downloading page elements, HTML files, CSS, JavaScript, all of the things that it takes to make up a web page. And we archive them. And we archive them into a piece of software we call the Wayback Machine, which can be used to play back those pages, to kind of recreate them, just like a web browser served them in the first place. We replay them in the future. We have hundreds of billions of URLs that we've archived in this fashion, and we've been ramping up our work over the last many years and months, and for many weeks now, we've been archiving more than 1 billion new URLs every day. So it's quite a you know, big enterprise. It involves a lot of engineers, hundreds of servers, actually thousands of servers in terms of the storage, but hundreds of servers that are actively working on the computing software, and you know, hundreds of thousands of users every day. And these users are journalists, they're researchers, they're academics, activists, and just the general public who may want to find you know, their old forgotten blog or website from a company they used to work for, or maybe the records of a former administration in a government that has evolved over the years, and maybe now no longer is a different party, different leadership involved. And how do you go back? You can't go back to those websites. They no longer exist. Well, with the Wayback Machine, if you're lucky, because we don't get everything, we just get a lot. If you're lucky, then you can go to the Wayback Machine and replay those pages.
And these days it includes Twitter, right? So if someone tweets something, yeah, and then deletes it, you will have the
yeah, maybe, yeah, a lot of times. So you know, there's some things where there's just so much there that we can't begin to get all of it and archive all of it, and probably nor should we, right? Facebook would be a great example, and many of the other larger social media platforms around the world, in China and Russia and other places, is very large. Twitter is another example where there's just a lot of activity. So we employ a range of techniques to try to pay attention to things that are important, whatever that means, right? I mean, so I'm just going to let's just use the word important. It could actually mean it may mean popular, right? It may mean at risk. It may mean written by someone who's in a position of power. It may mean about a topic that is significant, like COVID, for example. So there are a lot of different ways, right, that you could say, well, is this important or not important? And we generally try to cast a pretty wide net. And we generally spend a lot more time thinking about what we can get than thinking about what not to get. And so we listen to a lot of signals from different sources. We work with many different organizations. there's a project at MIT, and they Media Cloud, and they canvass news sites around the world. There's another project called GDELT. They do the same thing. We have a service called Save Page Now. Can I show that to you now?
Please, please.
Great.
Let me share your screen.
Okay, so I'm going to go here. So I hope you can see this is a screen that anyone can get to by going to web.archive.org/save. It's called Save Page Now, and any user can go to this screen and they can type in a website. So I'm going to type in San Francisco Center for the Book.org, sfcb.org, and I'm going to save the page. And this page is now being archived into the Wayback Machine. It's doing it in real time. And it's downloading page elements. You'll note that so it's done, and I'm going to now play back what it archived. And so there we go. And if it works, we're going to see that's that website, and I've played it back. And you can see at the very top, you see all those vertical black lines. That's a calendar view going back since 1998. So we have archived this particular page 1,007 times over the last many years, and you can see it's all there, and the link should work, and you can click through and go to other parts of that site. So that's an example of. I'm not sure where we are now. I went back. Are we on?
Can you click back on the
Yes,
the other tab?
Yep.
Yep. So can you maybe show the Wayback Machine and how people can just
Absolutely.
find?
So I'm just going to go to web.archive.org.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can just do that. This is the front screen of web.archive. So in this case, I'm going to go to, I'm going to look to see if we have a site in it. It's called ISKME, iskme.org. I'm going to see, yes, in fact, the Wayback Machine has archives of ISKME, more than 2,000 of them, and this is a calendar. So for seeing the year 2020 so far, up until we actually archived it 6 times. Today the 6th? Yeah, we archived it 6 times today, and we can go back in time. Now I'm going to look at in the year 2012. Oh, there's a nice little pattern there. You can see it looks like we were archiving it once a week. So there are many different schedules that get used, but here, see, in 2017, we started archiving it more, and the blue means each of those archives was a 200 error or status code for the web server. The greens, I think, are a redirect, and yeah, a redirect. So it means the URL will get redirected to another URL. Mm-hmm. Here, if I click the changes command, I can see why we have archived. You'll see the many different names on the left-hand side. Think of those as like different people who are archiving or different processes. Mm-hmm. And there are some other features there. So, yeah.
But the main idea. But the main idea is for people to simply be able to view the internet that may not exist today.
Precisely.
Just pages from the past. So whenever someone gets to a broken link or something that existed before and is now gone, they can simply go to the Wayback Machine and take a look at the website as it was before, right?
Correct. And I'm doing that right now. You'll see I'm looking at like an earlier version of this website and see it's radically different. So here it is from 2012, and it's radically different than what you just saw there. So, yeah. Or web pages too. We think about web pages a lot. So you would expect some web pages you'd expect to say the same, right? Let's say it's a news article. Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, you would expect that over time the news article itself wouldn't change. Well, sometimes it does, or maybe. There was something that happened in the United States a couple of days ago. Rachel Maddow, she's a anchor person on a TV network called MSNBC. She called out the Wayback Machine this week on her show because the U.S. government, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control website, had been referencing a study about COVID from the University of Washington. and it was projecting 72,000 deaths in America. And then that study changed their projection to 134,000 deaths. And then the next day, the reference to that website was deleted from the CDC website. And because the Wayback Machine had taken snapshots of that web page multiple times a day over the course of time, one was able to look at those archives side by side and see, oh, look, this changed. And unless one is doing that, there's no way to know what changes on the web. This goes to the web itself, right? The fundamental architecture of the web. Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the web, has discussed this and acknowledged that unlike a Wikipedia article, where every change is recorded and one can go back in time and see every change, generally speaking, the web is not like that. The web we can think of as kind of like the web is now. In fact, we call it the live web here at the Internet Archive. And the live web is what you see when you go to a URL right now, as opposed to maybe what the web was, right? And so unless you're taking snapshots, unless you're recording things over time, there's no built-in mechanism. There's nothing inherent in the architecture of the web to allow someone to go back in time. So that's why we built the Wayback Machine. The Wayback Machine is basically a time machine for the web.
What a concept. I mean, that's for the people who are now just hearing about this, it could be quite mind-boggling. It's amazing to think of the work that you've been doing and the amounts of data, of information that you're curating.
It's a lot.
And archiving. It's a lot.
It's a lot. We work in petabytes. Which I should say too, petabytes is a lot, but it's not a lot in Google terms. I mean, Google works in exabytes, so that's a lot, really a lot. But petabytes is a lot for us. Petabytes is thousands of hard drives a year, basically. Mm-hmm. So we buy hard drives by the pallet. Yeah.
I can only imagine the server farms and the amount of work that goes into that. But more interestingly, I know that in recent years, you have expanded from this original or the essential work that you do will always be archiving the web, right? The actual URLs, but you've expanded, right?
Totally. Yeah. So for example, like with regard to the Internet Archive, as I noted earlier, we also work in taking analog information and digitizing it. And I talked a little bit about books. In addition to books, we archive television news. So we archive about 60 television news channels 24/7 and make it all available. We embargo that information for 24 hours, and we allow people to see it in 2-minute segments, 2 minutes at a time, because we want to be respectful of the copyright owners. In addition to television, we have a new project where we're archiving radio. Radio is critically important, I think, and very special from an archival perspective, because it's inherently ephemeral, right? Radio is out there, it's heard, it's often not recorded in any way, and so there's no way to go back and fact check it, or to, what were they talking about, or no way to do research, longitudinal research, geographic research about how ideas flow and what topics are most important and how different people in different parts of the world hear different messages. It's been very difficult to do that kind of research. So we're archiving 1,200 radio stations 24/7 all over the world. And then we're using speech-to-text translation to be able to index all of that material so that people can do full-text searching on it and do further analysis. So
how do you choose what to go for?
In the case of television, maybe it was opportunistically, like in America, at least when we started this maybe 9 years ago, it was, let's just get all the big ones, right? Let's just get all the big national channels and let's get a bunch of the big markets. But then we picked some international, BBC, Al Jazeera and some others. We know we can do more, and so, but we just kind of pick some obvious. In the case of radio, similarly, we're not talking about music. We're interested in talk. We're interested in politics. The conversations and the politics and talk radio. So we try to get a good representation. I think there are I saw a directory once that listed about 10,000 significant radio stations around the world. So, we're getting a big chunk. We're not getting all of it. So books, television, radio, music. We digitize a lot of music. Not the new stuff so much. Often that's rights encumbered in some fashion. But definitely the old stuff. Like we have a pretty big project underway to digitize 78s. So 78s was the format that came before long playing records, before vinyl. And these are kind of big, heavy pieces of material made out of shellac. And we digitized almost 200,000 of them. They were donated to us by the Boston Public Library. And then we make them available on the web. We've also built interfaces for them for those devices, those smart speakers that we all talk to. I don't want to say their names because they're listening to me right now, but the one that starts with an A and the one that starts with a G, things like that. I'm not kidding. They'll start talking. But so what else do we do? We've got other projects under journals, for example, a lot of journal literature at scale. And a lot of photographs, a lot of movies, digitizing educational films, government films. It's a pretty big tent, and we're always expanding too. One of the fun things about working at the Internet Archive is just, I was going to say coming into the office every day, but waking up every morning and just kind of plugging into the buzz, the activity of the things that people have come up with and new projects that we're pursuing.